Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Animal Free Science Advocacy Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Elena Schaller, who works as AFSA's Research and Advocacy Officer. And we're going to be discussing the national opinion poll that AFSA recently commissioned on animal testing and research. Elena, welcome. It is so lovely to have you here with me.
Thanks, Donna. Super delighted to be here. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about this poll and why it's important to us.
Yeah, great place to start. So this is our fourth national poll on animal research. We've been tracking Australian attitudes since 2008, so we can actually see how public opinion has changed over time. The latest one in August surveyed around 1,000 Australians. It's the first time we've measured attitudes nationally since 2008. I'm sorry, 2018.
But it's still quite a big chunk.
Yeah, it is 7 years.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, a lot's changed since then.
Yeah.
Both in terms of available alternatives to animals
Yes.
and public awareness.
Yes. 100%.
So what makes this poll especially valuable for us is that the results speak directly to a lot of our campaigns that we're actively trying to reform. Things like national funding for developing alternatives, mandatory reporting on animal use, and rehoming requirements.
Yep. Some important topics there.
Yeah.
So let's unpack some of the results because some of these are really surprising. So the first section is about awareness and knowledge of animal research, where it was really clear that people are in fact unaware or quite uninformed in this field. I saw that over a third of people didn't even know that animals are used in research in Australia, and nearly 80% didn't know yet of any of the alternatives. So what does this tell us, and what can AFSA do about it?
Yeah, great question. I think this is probably what surprised me the most. It tells us that there's a really clear need for public-facing education. Even though awareness of alternatives is low, perceived reliability of those alternatives is growing compared to past years. So that's really encouraging. It suggests that attitudes could quickly shift once people have accurate information. And that's a huge opportunity for AFSA to shape the narrative around alternatives.
Right. Okay. If we get into the second section of the poll, we're looking at the opposition to animal use. And here I think that the results were pretty aligned with what we expected. Only 28% think that humans have the moral right to experiment on animals. What do you think this represents?
Yeah, great question. So that shows that Australians, well, over 70% actually, either don't believe that we have the moral right to experiment on animals or they're unsure if we do have that right. So it tells us that the ethical foundation for animal experimentation is really weak. People are moving away from the status quo, this is how it's always been done approach, and they're wanting stronger justification for causing harm for animals.
Yeah, I still find it crazy that 28% of people think that
Yeah.
we have a moral right to experiment on animals.
Yeah, it's tough.
It still blows my mind.
It's a bit baffling, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. What we did see was that most opposition to animal use in research was towards cosmetic testing, the use of dogs, cats, and primates, and procedures that were causing severe harm and death. So, in other words, there was little opposition to animal experimentation for the purpose of drug development, use of other species like farmed animals and rodents, and procedures that caused only discomfort. Why do you think this is? And what makes these aspects more tolerable?
Yeah, exactly. So there's sort of two parts here. First, there's a huge emotional factor when it comes to different animals. So people feel a stronger connection to dogs, cats, and primates. They see them as more intelligent, social, and just more like us. So many people have companion animals at home, and imagining them in a lab is really visceral and personal.
Yep.
By contrast, farmed animals are already used in other human contexts, so we're culturally desensitized to their suffering. In terms of purpose, the framing is really important. So, drug development gets positioned as life saving, medically urgent. So, people see it as a necessary evil. It's easier to justify even if they're uncomfortable with it. but cosmetics, that feels trivial and unnecessary. So it's a bit harder to justify. Um, but those distinctions are based more on perception than reality. Mice and rats feel pain just like dogs do.
Mm-hmm.
And most animal research isn't actually for critical life-saving drugs. A lot of it goes to basic research or commercial products. So while the public draws these lines, they're often drawn based on incomplete information about what's actually happening and why.
Yeah, I wish more people actually knew what was happening and the actual statistics of what happens behind closed doors. Because you and I know, that upwards of 90% of drug development actually fails to translate to anything helpful for humans. And I think if people knew that, they probably would shift their opinion. We obviously can't bombard them with all of this information in a questionnaire. We're trying to find out what they know on their own. But it's very clear that people still don't understand and they still don't have a full picture. So there's a lot of work to do in this space.
100%.
One thing that the respondents did learn from the questionnaire is that more than 7 million animals in Australia are used each year for research alone. And 3/4 of the respondents thought that this actually should be reduced.
Yeah, so I think that was a really important question to ask because when given concrete numbers, the support for reduction of animals spikes. Before seeing that number, animal research is a bit more abstract. People know that it happens somewhere to some animals, but when they're told 7 million, that feels a lot, even to people who might otherwise be okay with animal research. So one thing to note though is those numbers are a bit complicated. Some experiments use huge numbers of animals, like chickens or fish,
Birds.
yeah, exactly, for
Yeah.
agricultural
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
And those procedures might be relatively minor. Maybe they're just observing them. But others might use a handful of primates or dogs and then subject them to years of invasive procedures. So the total number doesn't really tell you anything about the severity of suffering.
100%.
Yeah. But even without understanding that nuance, the sheer number alone is enough for people to say, hey, that's too much. We need to do better. And I think that's significant. It shows that there's broad public support for reducing the number of animals used for science.
Yeah. And I mean, as terrible as 7 million is in Australia, in other countries around the world, it's way higher as well. So
Yeah,
globally, this issue is so much bigger.
so true.
Yeah. Now, a topic that I think everyone will be interested in, because it gives people, I think, the feeling that they're really helping the situation rather than just, signing a petition or donating somewhere. We're talking rehoming.
Yes.
So before we dive into the results, I should explain to our listeners that in Australia, there are no laws mandating the rehabilitation or rehoming of lab animals. So most animals are either passed on for use in yet another experiment, which can continue for years, or they might be too old or too ill or injured from the other experiments that they've been subjected to and then are killed. So very few ever actually leave the laboratory, nor are they allowed to retire. And there are a couple of organizations in Australia that do manage to secure the release and rehoming of select animals from laboratories, but it is a difficult process and it does come with a lot of caveats to it. That said, it's clear from our poll that Australians do want better for these animals. So tell me about some of the most notable results from this section.
Yeah, for sure. So this is actually one of the strongest areas of public consensus across the entire poll. So 4 out of 5 Australians, which is 80%, think that dogs and cats should have the opportunity to be rehomed after animal research.
Yep, agreed.
Almost as much, 77%, think that primates should be retired as sanctuaries after their use in research. When asked who should pay for this, most people said some combination of research institutions, medical research funding bodies, and the government.
Or all.
Or all. Yeah, exactly. But basically, there's a clear sense that this shouldn't fall just on charities. If you're using animals, you're responsible for their welfare afterwards, too.
Yeah, 100%. Why do you think, though, that rehoming is such a strong point of consensus?
Yeah, so I think rehoming reflects this shared belief that animals are sentient and capable of suffering and recovery.
Yeah.
I think for many people, knowing that a beagle spent many years in a lab and was then euthanized rather than given a chance at a normal life, I think that's really hard to accept. It's more a matter of fairness rather than radical reform. Um, I think this is a good point to mention that AFSA actually has a right to release campaign.
Yes.
We've partnered with Beagle Freedom Australia to lobby for government legislation to rehome animals after their use in research. You can visit our website to learn more about that and sign a petition for your state or territory government.
Yes, and I think that I come from a veterinary perspective as well, and a lot of people have concerns, about adopting an animal with an unknown past. Doesn't have to be from research, just in general. A lot of people are concerned about that aspect. I can definitely say that these are the animals that really appreciate everything that's done for them, that they really know the difference. Their appreciation for love and affection and safety is felt so much stronger than an animal that perhaps comes from a breeder. So I would say don't let that hold you back from considering one of these animals. I think sometimes they can be one of the best ones you'll ever have. Yeah, and on the flip side of it, we actually don't know how the ones that get rehomed are selected and what they've been subjected to. And some of the decision making behind that can also be a little contentious. So don't necessarily think that it was something terrible and they're going to be, traumatized or broken.
Right.
They could be just fine and the best addition to your family ever.
Yeah, so cute, Dad.
Yeah.
Love that.
So do you think that the institutions understand how much public support there is for this?
Probably not. Yeah, I don't think so. And that's really a missed opportunity. Rehoming is actually one of those rare policy areas where everyone's generally aligned. Animal welfare advocates, of course, the general public, as we just saw, and even a lot of researchers. It's really just not controversial. There's 80% support, which is huge.
Yeah.
Yet, rehoming options in Australia are limited.
Yeah.
They're often dependent on the goodwill of individual researchers or the tireless work of rescue organizations.
Yes.
So when institutions resist or ignore rehoming, they're not just going against animal welfare advocates, they're out of step with the vast majority of Australians. And in a sector that depends on public trust and public funding, that disconnect really matters.
Yeah. And I think we also owe it to these animals. Some people might say that they're doing a service to us, being not really volunteers. They don't really get a say in this, but, being our heroes that, step in and do the hard work for us. The least we can do is give them a good life after, just like on a very stripped down ethical ground.
Yeah.
Let's give back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. But then if we look at rehoming in practice, how would that look like? What are the barriers and the opportunities?
Yeah, it's good to clarify because it is a bit complicated, but not impossible.
Yeah.
So the main barriers that people cite are biosecurity, especially with primates, where there is a real concern about disease transmission. Also infrastructure, because you can't just adopt a research macaque into your backyard.
Not in Australia.
Yeah, not good. They need specialized sanctuaries with proper vet care, socialization, and years of funding.
Yes, they do live for many decades too.
Yes, exactly. So there are barriers, but they're not insurmountable, especially if we plan from the beginning. So imagine if every research ethics application had to include a rehoming assessment. Where will these animals go when the study ends? What's the plan? And if rehoming costs were built into the research budgets from day one, shared between the institutions, funders, and government, as was suggested, suddenly we're not scrambling for solutions after the fact. We're designing research with animal welfare as a built-in consideration, not an afterthought.
Yeah, I love that. And it's forward thinking how every project should be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so let's tie this all back into AFSA's goals.
Yeah.
We want to see the end of animal experimentation in Australia. So how can we use all of this data to strengthen our campaigns or leverage our asks?
Yeah, so fortunately, the data really reinforces and updates what we've been building and seeing over the years. Support has grown since our last poll. For example, 71% now want funding for alternatives, which is up from 61% in 2018.
Yep.
Rehoming support remains rock solid also. Um, Plus, it gives us fresh ammunition for the specific policy windows opening up right now,
Yep.
like the federal budget pre-submission process that
Yes.
AFSA is participating in.
Yep.
So when we sit down with policymakers for that, we're not pulling out 2018 numbers. We can say, here's what Australians told us in 2025, and that data lines up perfectly with the campaigns that we're pushing.
Yeah, perfect. So, all right. The code for the care and the use of animals for scientific purposes. It's a big mouthful. In short, we call it the code.
The code.
That's a set of guidelines on how animals can be used in research and teaching across Australia.
Yes.
And it's currently under review.
Yay.
So we're in the process of making recommendations for this consultation, as you
Right.
would know. Something we're very excited about, eager to see unfold. Do you think this data changes our case for regulatory reform?
So I think it really strengthens it actually. And the timing couldn't be better with it being under review this year. I think what makes the data so powerful is that it really does validate our reforms. For example, we're pushing for mandatory rehoming assessments, and the poll shows that there's 80% public support for that. We're calling for national transparency and reporting standards. 68% of Australians want that.
Love it.
We're advocating for stronger ethical justification requirements at the ethics stage, and only 28% believe that we have the moral right to experiment on animals. So when we submit our recommendations next year, we're not just citing animal welfare science or international best practice. We can now say that this is what the Australian public expects and demands from their regulatory system.
Yeah, perfect. I really hope that they listen.
Me too.
All right. So for the policymakers out there, what do you think they should take from our poll?
Yeah. Oh, I hope they're listening. Okay, so I think the most important thing is this. Animal research is not a niche concern. It's mainstream. This data came from 1,000 Australians from all walks of life, and there's overwhelming consensus on key reforms.
Yep. Which we've seen over time.
Yes. Increasing 100%. The second thing is we're not asking for radical change. We're pointing to clear, fixable gaps with solutions. The public expects animals to rehome after research, yet there's no legal requirement for that. They expect to know how many animals are being used and for what, yet we don't have any national reporting system. They want investment in alternatives, and there's no dedicated funding stream.
Yep.
So the federal government is setting budget priorities for the next financial year as we speak. And this poll shows that funding alternatives isn't just good science. It's what Australians want their tax dollars supporting.
Yeah, and I think that what I'm hearing and seeing from every angle that we look at it, every issue embedded in animal research is fixable, highly fixable, and the solutions are already there.
Exactly. Yeah. It's tough. Like, I get it. They have like competing priorities and everything, but I hope we can make this one stand out.
Yep, we've got all the tools there. We've got all the answers we need. We just need people to listen and get with the times and listen to, I guess, what people are now saying.
That's it.
So there's a lot more results that we have on this poll. We won't be able to unpack them all today, but if someone does want to go and have a look at all of them, just head on over to our website. That's www.animalfreesci.org.au. Elena, what is one thing you'd like our listeners to take from our poll?
Yeah, I want people to know that this isn't a lost cause. Public opinion is overwhelmingly in favor of change. Australians want transparency. They want rehoming. They want investment in modern science that doesn't rely on animals.
Yeah.
So I think change is within reach, and the more people that know about this issue, the faster that change will come.
Yeah, 100%. If anyone listening is supporting of AFSA or wants to get involved, please subscribe to our newsletter, donate, become a member, buy our merch, support our campaigns. There's so many options and ways that you can get involved and help us. Awareness is clearly our biggest barrier. So every kind of support to spread the word helps. And every contribution, no matter how big or small, is appreciated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well said.
That's it from us, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.